Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, here for the Daily Blob, where we say, well, bad news is you're probably a sad sack. But the good news is it looks like you have a hell of a lot of company. So anyways, I've been talking about the economy a lot lately because the number one question I get is jobs. Not stacks, not how to solve problems, not how to be nicer to your boss. It's always, Eli, how do I get a job? One of the things I've been talking about is our economy is in a kerfuffle. I would say at the moment, but realistically, it's a kerfuffle that's been going on for a long time. The last time we probably had a relatively sane economy was back in the 2008 timeframe before everything exploded. And essentially since then, it's been a bit of a weird crap show, right? The government has been propping things up. The government has been printing money. It's frankly just been weird, but it does seem like the duct tape is coming off of these jerry-rigged things that we've done for the economy, and people are getting more and more concerned, especially with what the Trump administration is doing. Whether you agree fundamentally with Trump or not, whether you believe in globalization versus isolation, or I guess isolation versus globalization, whether you believe in isolationism, again, versus military adventurism or whatever else. The reality is how he's going about the policies of changing how the U.S. does stuff is just pretty piss poor crappy, right? Massive new tariffs, massive new taxes on the goods that Americans pay for. Weird stuff going on with our allies. Not just us fucking with China, which is weird, but us screwing basically with everybody, right? Europe and Canada and Mexico and all that kind of stuff. We're just in this time period where we know there's problems. At the same time we're told everything is good, we all fundamentally know that there's a problem here. And so this is kind of curious, coming from Axios. Job market gloom hasn't been this bad since the Great Recession. So an important thing to understand about the economy is the economy does care about your feelings, right? Because basically how you feel determines how you interact with the economy. I think about this. I was talking to a senator, a congressperson, back when I was in high school, and George Bush Sr. had just been kicked out of office, right? Clinton had just won. And one of the big buzzwords or the phrases of the time was, it's the economy stupid. Right? So basically, Bush had his 4 years. We went into a recession during his first 4 years. And basically, he essentially tried to say that there wasn't a recession going on. Seems like I've seen this one before. Anyway, so he kept saying that there wasn't a recession going on and that everybody didn't know what they were talking about. The curious thing is, when it was absolutely obvious that there was a recession, big problems. And so I was talking to this congressperson about it, and I was like, yeah, why, again, being a teenager, why was our president so stupid? And he said, well, think about it this way. If you know we're in a recession, or you think we're going into a recession, what would you do? And me, being a good little boy, I'd say, well, I'd put my money into savings and I'd stop spending so much money in the whole 9 yards. And I met this congressperson because I was in DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America. I was actually competing at the state level at some event there. And basically he looked at me, he's like, well, as a business person, right, you want to be an entrepreneur. What happens if everybody else in society does what you're saying? What happens when you run a business and everybody decides not to spend as much money? What happens to your business? Like, right? Probably goes under. And it's like, yeah, and then what happens to everybody else's businesses, right? So the thing is, right, if people believe that they're in a recession, they will spend less money because it's the right thing to do, which in fact drives a society into a worse recession. You keep this cycle up and everything goes to hell. And so the concept there being with George Bush Sr. is that he didn't want to admit to the recession under the idea that if he admitted to the recession, things would get worse. So what's curious here is that the job market gloom being as bad, or hasn't been as bad since the Great Recession, basically this is more and more people feeling depressed about the economy. And if people feel depressed about the economy or concerned about the economy, they may not spend as much money as they would have. And if they don't spend as much money, then that money isn't going into businesses, which means they don't have money to pay employees. Ergo, then employees start getting laid off. And then people see the layoffs and go, oh, wow, yeah, the economy is worse than I thought. So I'm going to really save money now, which means less money goes in the economy, which means more layoffs, so on and so forth. So we look at this, again, the unemployment chart here, that shows, so back in, 2008 or whatever, 2009, there was about a 45% concern about higher unemployment next year, spiked all the way up into the 60s, and then it dropped, right? Basically, this is where people thought the unemployment rate, people were concerned about the unemployment rate with the year coming up, and now with Trump, it spikes up again. So this is how many people are concerned that basically the unemployment rate is going to go up and that the economy is going to get worse. And so one of the questions that you have to be asking yourself is, when you're selling products or services to customers, how can you get them to open your wallet even when they don't want to? Right? It's that whole, during the good times, you sell flashy, sexy things, and during the bad times, you sell cybersecurity and essentially plumbing and that type of deal, right? When you go to the customer and you're upselling, right? Upsell or die. When you're upselling, in 2015, if you're upselling, right, it might be a good idea to upsell flashy and sexy and cool, right? Don't you want the most awesome website out there so that everybody knows how successful you are? If you don't have an amazing website, people aren't going to know you're successful, right? $20,000 for a new website. If you don't have an app, right? If your dog dating service doesn't have an app, people aren't going to think you're modern. Oh, there's $100,000 or $200,000 for an app for your dog dating, right? And during 2015, you try to go for like that sexy. You really try to go for that whole sizzle deal when you're trying to sell stuff. If people are concerned the economy is going to get worse, then what are the things that you sell to people when they think the economy is going to get worse, right? Oh, so you have a receptionist. I mean, this is horrible, it is. So you have a receptionist, right? So you pay your receptionist however much money. Hey, if you buy an auto attendant system from us, the auto attendant system, all installed, will cost about $5,000, and that will take over the receptionist duties. Wouldn't you prefer to not have to continue paying a receptionist during these bad economic times, right? Right? $5,000, you get to eliminate that position, right? Things about going to... think about things like going to infrastructure as a service. Okay, you have all this localized infrastructure here, and there's rent money on that, there's electricity bills on that, there's insurance, all of that kind of stuff. If we did the migration, $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever, to migrate your services up to AWS or Azure, then you would see the benefits of not having to pay rent and that type of thing. That might be a valuable deal. We had leasing programs. So Marlin, I don't know if they're still any good. 16 years ago, they were good. Marlin Leasing. We actually had this program so our customers could lease products from us. So basically what happened is when the customer signed the contract, we got 50% what the contract was. And then as soon as the contract was finished and we got the sign off from the customer, we got the other 50%. And then they basically got a payment plan for the next 3 years. One of the things to be thinking about with your company, right? Maybe up until this time, it's all been... 90 days, right? 60 days, 90 days, whatever else. You give them the bill, either they pay now or they pay in 30, 60, 90 days, and that's what the agreement is. Maybe you've been doing so well over the past 10 years, you haven't had to think about monthly payment plans. So maybe now is the time to start thinking about that, going to companies like Marlin Leasing or whoever else, and saying, hey, what financial instruments are on the table to allow us to have our customers pay a monthly fee instead of having to spend $20,000 up front, right? If I go to a business right now and I say, look, this project is going to do all these amazing things. This project is amazing. It's going to change your life, but it's going to cost you $20,000 up front. Right? Here's the reality. They just may not have it. One, they may not have it. Or two, they just might be scared. Why do I want to spend $20,000 now for a business that might not exist in 6 months, right? That's real. Like I can take that $20,000 and I can siphon it out of the company and I can buy a little boat with it. Or I can buy your computer system and the company might die in 6 months, right? One of the things to think about is if you go to them and say, look, you can get this $20,000. So this $20,000 computer system is going to do all this amazing stuff for you. And we have an agreement with the leasing company. So all you have to do is you simply pay $1,000 upfront plus $300, whatever it is per month for 3 years. And that's it. Like instead of $20,000 upfront, it's now $1,300 upfront. The other cool thing with leasing is when you lease, you don't own the equipment, so there's not taxes and other stuff that's involved, which is kind of curious, right? So you can now go to the customer, right? You can sell them. And the cool part is, I'm gonna tell you the cool part. You know what the really cool part about this is? So selling them a $20,000 system all up front is difficult. You know, if you sell them the exact same system for $25,000 on a monthly payment plan, right? It's weird how people do numbers in their head. You give them a monthly payment plan, and not only is it easier to close a sale many times, but you can actually jack up the profit on the sale quite substantially. So, yeah, these are things to be thinking about as we go. And as you say, oh my God, that's horrible, but it's also paying your mortgage. It's paying for your employees. It's paying, like, that's the whole, I don't know. It's business. It's business. Americans haven't been this gloomy about the job market since the Great Recession. Fears about joblessness have surged since President Trump unveiled plans to impose steep tariffs on foreign goods. The economy might have hit a soft patch, but it has so far dodged the bleak predictions from a few months ago. Consumers are still bracing for the worst to come. That's another big thing with trust. One of the reasons I despise Trump as our president is you can't trust a goddamn thing that he says, right? He comes out, he says, this is how the world is. He goes home, he binges on some Diet Coke. The next day, the world is an entirely different scenario. So one of the issues that we have is when you cannot trust your leadership, then even when things seem to be going better than you would expect, do you really trust that, right? I talk about that with Trump firing the head of BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So Bureau of Labor Statistics comes out with numbers that Trump doesn't like. Surprise, surprise, surprise. The job count is not what he likes, and so he literally fires the head of that department and now is trying to put in his own talking head, right? Basically put in his own puppet. Because what did he say? What did he say? I don't like those numbers, ergo you're getting fired. Which means if he's replacing that person, he wants the numbers to look right. So he is blatantly stating he is hiring somebody to provide the numbers that he wants to see, which means you can't trust their numbers anymore, right? Isn't that the argument with China, right? The government is so entrenched with statistics and all that kind of stuff. Any number, a number that comes out of China, you simply cannot trust it. And now we get that with the United States. You simply cannot trust the numbers that are coming out. And so what does that do for the consumers? What if everything is going better? What if inflation was going down and, salaries were going up? What if by the numbers everything seemed to be good, but people didn't trust it? As of early August, the pessimism was in step with that of the 2008 financial crisis. About 62% of consumers believe unemployment will worsen in the year ahead, according to the University of Michigan. That's bounced around a little in the last few months, but consistently hung around levels not seen since the Great Recession. The concerns about higher unemployment are paired with worries about an inflation resurgence. Quote, although CPI inflation has not surged, our data show that consumers are still bracing for an increase in inflation to come. Because, yeah, it only makes sense, right? If you put 20%, 30%, 50% taxes on products coming into the country, right, inflation is going to go up. This is not that complicated. We see this right now, right? Month over month, veggies, apparently fresh veggies are up by like 48%, right? It makes sense. Oh, wait a minute. So we're putting massive tariffs on countries like Mexico. At the exact same time, the government is trying to throw out 3,000 illegal immigrants a day. And so many of those illegal immigrants are literally working in the fields. Right? So if you look at it, even if you're a Trumper, right? You're die-hard red hatter. You got 5 red hats on. Oh, you wear 2 red hats? Puh, I don't go out of the house without 5 on. Even if you totally believe it, you 100% agree with Trump. if you jack up the tariffs on Canada and you're kicking out the people that work on the farms, the fact of the matter, prices for shit's gonna go up. Quote, moreover, consumers are also concerned that labor markets will weaken. Yeah. So anyways, I just kind of think this is an interesting thing to take a look at as we talk about the economy. Again, our position with jobs, with businesses, with all of that kind of stuff, and to think about where we go from here. My argument keeps going down to, and again, I know it's controversial, get your bucket. I got my bucket. It's over here. I got my bucket. Oh, get your bucket for the blue hair tears. It's even a blue bucket. It's even a blue bucket. Get your bucket for the blue hair tears when they start crying. But I will continue to say, in this kind of world, in this kind of market, solve problems with technology. Talk to people, communicate with people to figure out what it is that they actually care about, and then figure out how to offer products and services that target those particular needs, right? As I talk about with Merlin Leasing, and to be clear, not sponsored or anything, they're just a good service. I used them for a couple of years. They were fucking fabulous years ago. Anyways, but that's the kind of thing, right? If you've been doing projects up until now, that are either projects or time and material billing, right? That may have been fine. That may have been fine for the past 10 or 15 years and you've had zero issue. One of the things just to consider about business though is things like payment plans. Simply offering a payment plan for your products and services may be able to allow you to survive through whatever the hell is coming next, right? The customers, instead of having to put all that money up front, they can put down a small fraction up front, then they just pay the monthly fee and go from there, right? That's the kind of thing, that's the difference between life or death. When I had my business, right, and the Great Recession happened, one of the problems that we ran into, one of my fuck-ups, one of my many fuck-ups, is we didn't have maintenance contracts. Right? This is probably not the time to start selling maintenance contracts, but we didn't have maintenance contracts. So I had buddies of mine, they had maintenance contracts, right? They charge $500, $5,000, whatever dollars per month for their customers, and then they just do all of the work. Right? I was concerned about maintenance contracts because it is a legal liability for you with that type of thing. And we were making so much money. We were making so much money off of time and material and project billing, right? Repairing computers, doing projects, that type of thing. So, you know, the whole maintenance contract, it was on the table. It is something that I had considered and I had decided no to. Right? My way is working. Well, here's the thing with that legal liability. When you have a maintenance contract with a customer and the economy goes to hell, they are still legally required to pay you whatever the fuck that maintenance contract is, $500 a month, $5,000 a month, whatever, right? And if they don't, you can take them to court. Here's the deal. When you do time and material billing and when you do project billing and the economy goes to hell, then you just stop getting phone calls from your customers because they're not going to buy it. Nothing is forcing them to pay you. Right? If they have a telephone system and you do time and material billing and the telephone system fails for some reason, right? The telephone system just craps the bed, right? You spent $10,000 on the telephone system, something glitches the hell out. But they don't feel comfortable with a $1,000 bill, right? They call you in order to repair the telephone system. Might be a couple $100, might be $1,000, whatever else. Well, here's the thing. If it's a telephone system, and back in the day, if you had, like, let's say 4 lines coming in, so they're called hunt groups. Anyways, you had 4 trunk lines coming in. Literally, what you could do is you could unplug all those 4 trunk lines from your telephone system. You could literally plug in 4 just normal fucking phones, and now you've solved your problem. I mean, it's ugly as shit. But here's the thing. Like back in 2008, 2009. I mean, what, a phone going to Best Buy, buying a phone maybe cost $10. You buy 4 phones for $10 each. That cost you $40. And now you have some kind of a solution. Ugly solution, god-awful ugly solution, but you do have a solution. And that means I don't get any money. There's no, right? You don't have to call me. I talk about that with a client of ours that had a warehouse. They had 30 people in a warehouse. Everybody in the warehouse was on wireless. And their Wi-Fi access point dropped, died, just as it does. Literally, they said they had a problem. We used Cisco AeroNet access points at the time. So I forget. I think it was like $600. It was like $600 for me to buy it, and then I only upcharged like $50 or something like that. a very like a low amount, and then we had our hourly rate. So my whole profit for installing a new wireless access point was like $150. Right? I wasn't buying a lot of steak or anything after this particular job. So anyways, I talked to him and I'm like, look, you give me the go ahead, I buy the AeroNet access point, and you're up and running in like 2 days. Basically, whatever for shipping. The guy stopped at Best Buy and bought a LinkedIn access point. Literally got a phone call from him and said, yeah, I stopped at Best Buy, I bought a LinkedIn access point for $50, and we're just going to use that. You're like, what? What? You have 30 people in a warehouse. And this isn't 2025 Linksys access. This is 2009 Linksys access point. Look at this. This isn't I lost a sale. This is, no, don't fucking do it. Anyway, but that was a thing, right? It was $50-$60, versus $700. So he went with a $50-$60 solution. Dumb solution, but you can't do anything about it. And that's one of the things to consider with business is literally how you design your payment systems will determine whether you can decide to get through these blips. Because think about this, right? So if you have the Great Recession happens, or you're going through the kurfuffle, and you have 20 clients on maintenance contracts, so they have year maintenance contracts. Some of those people are going to be coming up to the end of their contracts now. Some of these people have just signed their contract. So the people who just signed the contract, you just do the work for the next year and hope by next year things have worked itself out. The people coming to the end of the contracts, right? Those people, some of them are still doing fine. Again, as the dominoes fall, they're still doing fine, so they need to pay you. And maybe you lose a couple. But that's the thing. Since everybody is locked in legally to pay you, even if you do lose a couple, you're losing 10% of your work. Right? When the recession fully hit us, we lost 90% of our work. Whereas if you have these maintenance contracts, right, okay, you might lose 10% of your work or 20% of your work, right? I can figure out how to adjust my employees and my finances and all of that based off of losing 10 or 20% of my income. God knows what the fuck you do when you lose 90% of your income. Right? And so these are some of those kind of things to be considering. Like if you're an employee right now is the perfect time to start being a consultant. Right? If you're a consultant, you should make $100 an hour. $100 minimum. I mean, it's now 2025. I was saying that shit back in 2012. Anyways, minimum, you should be making $100 an hour as a consultant. So maybe this is the time you go out and you start consulting to build websites. Right? If you can build, a couple of websites a month, that's a few $1,000s in your pocket. Is that right? If you're making $150,000 a year in tech right now, a couple extra thousand, right? Maybe $25,000 a year. Maybe that's not a lot of money. But you're learning how to do the consultant work. You're learning how to provide deliverables to customers and clients. You're learning how to sell. You're learning, right, that product market fit. And you're starting to get a customer base. So if the company does lay you off, right, this isn't great, but it's a start. I would rather start from a layoff with $25,000 of recurring revenue or revenue coming in from my side hustle than starting from nothing. Right? That's the nice thing about being an employee or an entrepreneur during a recession is that you can always make something. Right? An employee is either making their salary or they're making nothing. Either 100% or 0%. The cool part about being an entrepreneur is you get the full range. Sometimes you're making 100%. Sometimes you're making 40%. Sometimes you're making 200% every couple of months, right? And hopefully that all fleshes out to a decent salary. So I don't know. This is the kind of stuff that you need to be thinking about. Talking with people at your office. Maybe now's the time to start a startup company, right? I just did a video talking about this AT&T, right? AT&T has gone past quiet firing. They're just going to ballbuster firing at this point. Literally, not only are they killing work from home, but they're also closing offices at the exact same time. So even if you return to office, the office you might have returned to, they are shutting down. They're forcing you to move to an entirely different office, like hundreds of miles away, and you're responsible for the travel budget, or for the moving expenses. They're not helping you with the moving expenses. Basically means they want you to go the hell away. So this might be the time to sit down with your buddy, right? You have peers. You've been shooting this shit about your $1 billion startup idea for a while. Maybe it's time to start pushing that startup idea ahead. And that's a thing to consider and to think about during these times. It's that you need to position yourself. You need to have agency in your own life. I think about that like with everything for the past 20 years. You know, everything for over 20 years of my life revolves around 2 minutes of interaction. And that's not a joke. That's not hee hee ha ha, right? So I was at that pizza place I got laid off of, right? So I had my college degree, I had my Army, I had my MCSE, I had Avaya, I had Cisco, I had experience, right? We had the dot-com bubble burst, and I wound up in Seattle working at a pizza delivery place. And the thing is, right? It's optimizing for luck, right? So many people want to be lucky. But here's the question. What happens if the opportunity is placed on the table in front of you and then you don't do anything with it? Right? The idea of optimizing for luck, my concept with luck, is that luck is coming through your door every day. But have you optimized to be able to take that opportunity? Like with GitHub, right? I get so many snot-nosed little bastards. Stop pretending you're cool. You're fucking pathetic. Start doing something, right? I talk about this with fucking GitHub, right? So annoying, right? Every recruiter I know, everybody who runs a company, right? If you want to get hired, they're gonna look at your GitHub. That's just how it is, right? I know recruiters, the first thing they do is they look at your GitHub. If you haven't put anything on GitHub in a month, they don't give a fuck about you. Right? Because that tells them everything they need to know, right? And so here's the thing, right? If you met the next Mark Zuckerberg, imagine this for a second. You met the next Mark Zuckerberg. Have you been adding to your GitHub? Have you been doing little projects with Olama? Have you been doing little projects with ChatGPT or Replit or whatever else? Have you been doing things so that if you met the next Mark Zuckerberg, and he said, yes, I have this idea for a dog dating app that is going to take over the world. And you're like, wow, I want to be part of that dream. Hey, can I be part of your startup? Right? What if they're like, oh, okay, yeah, let me just take a look at your GitHub. I just want to make sure that you know the language or whatever. Let me take a look at your GitHub. Oh, I don't have anything on GitHub. Then what happens to that luck? What happens to that opportunity? What happens if the next Mark Zuckerberg walks through the door and then you keep your mouth shut because you don't feel like you have anything to say to him? I think about this. I actually worked with somebody that was one of the first employees apparently for Microsoft. Oh, you want to talk about feeling like shit? Yeah, she felt like shit. She had a pretty normal fucking job. And her brother had been one of the first people to work at Microsoft. Ooh, you want to talk about income inequality in a single family. But that was the thing. Apparently the guy met Bill Gates and they hit it off and he became one of the first employees for Microsoft, right? But anyway, it's like for me, like when they going through all this stuff, I was working this pizza delivery job, trying to figure out what the fuck to do. And our telephone system was a bit quirky. And so this guy, Adolfo, was called in to fix the telephone system. So he's back there and he's fixing the telephone system. Again, I was certified for Avaya system, Definity, Audix back in the day. And so I see him and I'm like, hey man, who do you work for? He's like, what? I'm like, hey, I've got 100 hours of Avaya, Definity, and Audix certifications, plus I've got all this other stuff. Is your company hiring? And he said, oh, this is my company. I was like, okay, are you hiring? He's like, well, I'm not hiring, but if you'd like to come out, I can explain to you what I do. And I've told this story before. And so we go, and we have some coffee, and he takes me to a client. I see a couple of things that he does. And basically he literally shows me how easy it is to become a consultant. right? The luck was when Adolfo walked through the door. The optimizing for luck is that I had the certifications and telephone systems and all that stuff previously, and then I took the action. That action, I can tell you at this point in time, I can tell you that few minutes in a shitty ass pizza shop 20 some odd years ago in Seattle, Washington, fundamentally changed my life. Anybody who remembers me when I actually did tech education and actually finds that valuable, all of that, everything goes back to a few minutes 20 years ago. And that's what I want you to be thinking about. Stop the crying. Stop the crying. Real men cry, but not all the fucking time. Right? Add to your GitHub. Do projects. Learn. Right? When I talk about Supabase, figure out Supabase. When I talk about Olama, go test some Olama. When you hear about other things, go play with those other things. Go to meetups, meet people, talk, understand their situation, offer them cups of coffee, and you would be surprised how many opportunities exist, even when it seems like your world is going to hell. But anyways, I'm just a jackass in the basement. I am just an unempathetic piece of crap screaming into my camera in the basement. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the job market gloom being the worst since the Great Recession? What do you think about the economy? How do you think things are going? What do you think about the idea of optimizing for luck? When was the last time you added to GitHub? What if Mark Zuckerberg, the next Mark Zuckerberg. What if Lucky Palmer Lucky? I think he's the next Elon Musk. Anyways, what if Lucky Palmer Lucky, what the fuck his name is, right? What if he walked through the door, right? You look at that goofball, he looks like a fucking goofball. Anyways, what if he walked through the door? That's the luck. That's the moment of luck. What have you done to optimize so you might be able to turn that situation into something valuable? I don't know. If you like these videos, give us a thumbs up. If you don't, give us a thumbs down. Call me amazing. Call me a moron. Just do it in the comment section. With that, see y'all later.